Okay, so this workshop was inspired by a couple of the recent tickets that have come in for Azure Devops, and that's mostly around what our plugin is and how it works and how you install it and probably how you debug it. And so that's what I wanted to focus on here. Azure Devops is one of the more popular CI tools that we integrate with, but it's probably the tool I have the least experience with myself. So I won't be going into a whole lot of how Azure DevOps itself works, but we can certainly dive into the plugin and look at some of the corners and edge cases there. So to start with, I wanted to give just a quick rundown of how you actually get Azure DevOps if you want to replicate issues locally or even just play with it. The first way, and what I'll be demoing here for a bit, is based on a VM. So I'm using Hyper-V here. And it comes with this quick create option, and Microsoft supply a development instance of Windows 10. And so this is really handy because it's a big download, but it's super easy to get up and running. You click this button here, create virtual machine. It's going to download it, spin it up, and you'll have quite a functional desktop VM that you can install a lot of tools into. So that's really handy and something that I think a lot of people would benefit from knowing. So this is the VM here that I've created with that template, and in here I've installed Azure DevOps just from the free download. So you can start these 90-day trials. I think it actually used to be free for like up to 5 people. Maybe they've changed it recently, but anyway, a 90-day trial is certainly enough to get you up and running. And these Windows VMs actually kind of expire after 45 days anyway. So yeah, 90 days here is plenty. But actually probably an easier way of getting up and running is just to sign up for a cloud instance. They're free. So if you just go to dev.azure.com, if I won't sign out because actually I don't remember my password, but if you, actually I'll do a private window, dev.azure.com. Yeah, so you can just sign up for free. I just use my GitHub credentials, and yeah, they just give you a free instance that you can use online. The online instance is kept up to date. I think they do like monthly sprints or something. So you'll see some differences between the online version and the version that I've hosted locally. I'll call out some of those. We won't go into too much detail, but just be aware that if you're helping people diagnose issues, it might be worth finding out whether they're on a cloud instance or whether they've installed it locally, because some of the options will differ between the two of them. But it doesn't really affect us too much in that the plugin works on both the same way. So probably the first thing to do once you get your instance is install our plugin. And so that is under extensions here. I've already installed it, but we can kind of go through the process. So this is here. This is what it looks like when it's installed. But if that wasn't there, you'd go to Browse Marketplace. Search for Octopus. It's this one here. Once you click that, it'll take you back. So I'm in the marketplace now. It's going to link me back to my Azure DevOps instance. It's probably going to tell me it's already installed, but right, it's already installed. But from this point, you just kind of click next, 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 done, and you'd have the plugin installed. And so I've done that both here on the cloud instance and on the one I've got hosted locally. So what is our plugin? What does it do? Is probably the next question if you haven't used it or not overly familiar with it. And so there's two main things that the plugin gives you. One is this widget here on the dashboard. And so this, you can kind of imagine people might use this to monitor the status of the deployments. And we can go through here and configure the various bits and pieces that are shown in this widget. So that's one part of it. The bit that I guess causes more support issues though are the build steps. And so what I've got here is a fairly simple project to build a Java application. And so these bits here, these are all the Azure Devops provided steps. And then you can imagine at the end of this, we have a compiled application and we need to push it off to Octopus to do something with. And that's where our steps, the steps provided by our plugin, come in. So if I just maximize this. So the way you add these steps is you just click this, this plus icon here. And if I can just move that out of the way, we get the option to add our steps. So these are the steps here. And so most of these relate directly to Octopus CLI commands. So create release, we'll be calling octo create release. This is octo push, octo promote, octo deploy, Octopus push build information, and this is octo pack. That's octo exe space pack as opposed to octo pack, all one word, which was an older plugin used by like the full .NET as opposed to .NET Core for packaging applications. It's sometimes easy to get those two confused. So I've got one set up here, and the first step is probably going to be, ignore this one that I've disabled, I'll get back to that. The first step is usually push the package off to Octopus. And so one of the issues that we've had lately in support is, well, what actual API calls are these things making? How do you know? And so probably the easiest way that I found to kind of understand how these plugins work and what calls they make was to enable the request logging in Octopus. So that's just these steps here. And once that's enabled, what you get in the logs directory are these files here. And so this one, this web one here, is going to be detailing the API access that we make today. So I'm just going to use PowerShell here to basically tail the content. And what we'll see is as we make requests in the plugin, we can start to see what shows up here. So these drop downs are populated from Octopus. And as you can see, when I hit the refresh button there, it's gone out to Octopus and hit the spaces all endpoint to get the list of spaces. I might actually just, no, I haven't added any. I haven't added a license, so we can't add more spaces, but that's okay. Right, so push is probably not a good one. We don't have a lot there. Let's do this one. Project group, you can see project groups all. Refresh the project itself. That's where we hit that endpoint there. Channels, whatnot. So this is a kind of a quick and easy way of kind of peering behind the curtain to see how this, how the plugin communicates with Octopus to get the information that it needs, and that may help you answer some questions. And actually, watching these interactions and API requests is probably also a good debugging tool for customers if they want to do that themselves. So the next thing that's important to know is where does the Octopus CLI come from that these tools actually use, or this plugin actually uses. And so there's three different ways that generally speaking, there's three different ways of where the plugin comes from. So all of these steps by default will attempt to reach out to the Octopus download page and get the latest version. And so they do that by, in the code base, there's two different ways that network requests can be made. The plugin can either kind of proxy requests through Azure DevOps itself, and that's how these requests here are being made. So if I went into the console here, you won't actually see connections being requested through the browser. So if I just hit maybe refresh here, you can see the request got proxied through Azure DevOps, but the browser itself doesn't actually make requests to Octopus. And that gives, I guess that's just a convenience for the plugin. They don't really have to worry about things like CORS, cross-origin, resource settings, I think that stands for, which is why one of the way browsers kind of prevent JavaScript from talking to our external services, because in this case, the proxy being Azure DevOps itself, it can take care of all that for you. So that's one way, but that's a fairly limited solution. It doesn't allow you to download big files, for example. And so what this plugin actually does is all of these UI interactions are done through that proxy, but downloading the extension itself is done directly through like a Node.js HTTP call. And that works in almost all cases. It doesn't respect the proxy though. So if you have a proxy set up on your Windows machine that Azure is using, Azure DevOps is using, these requests here should go through it, but this request to get the latest version of the CLI tool won't. And that's perhaps going to be an issue for some people. Not so much if they're using the hosted instance, because I don't think it uses proxies. I don't think you can tell it to actually go through any of your proxies, but on-prem definitely may have an issue there where that request to octopus.com downloads will fail. And so if it fails, then the fallback is to use this, installer step. And I should have a right click. Let me just enable this. And so what this installer step does actually is it too will also try and go out and download that file. But if it fails, it will fall back to a embedded copy of Octo CLI. And so that's updated whenever the plugin is updated, but it's not updated whenever the Octo CLI is updated. So there may be a delay between Octo CLI being released and a new version of the Azure plugin being released. And so this is a good get out of jail free kind of step to use before any others, but you just have to be aware that it may fall back to a slightly older version, and that may be something that people need to be aware of if they're looking for a specific fix in a specific version of Octo CLI. But the third way around that is then you can install Octo CLI locally yourself and set up the agent to defer to your installed copy instead of having these steps try and download their own or use an embedded copy. So if I go to my agent here, so I should just point out, so I do have Octo installed locally. I've just done through Chocolatey. It's probably going to be right, Octo in the Chocolatey bin directory, and this directory here is on the path, so that's important. Octo needs to be on the path for this to work. So if we go into our agent setup, so this is my a local agent. I'm actually running that here. All I've done to set up that agent is basically follow the instructions that you get when you click this button. And so this agent is online. If we look at capabilities, what we can do here is define a new custom capability. And that looks like, just want to make sure what version we've got, 7.4.0. So what we do is we're going to make a capability called Octo. I think that's it. Let me just double check. So this is all in the docs, by the way. It's either Octo or capital, or capitals or not. Okay, it's just called Octo. So drop back here. So call that Octo. I think we set that to 7.4.0. And so what will happen is now this agent understands that it has the ability to call Octopus, the Octopus CLI locally, and that will allow it or take precedence over using either the embedded CLI or trying to download it itself. So I think I have to save. No, maybe. Yep, okay, we'll leave that there. So we can see that in action. Let's go back to our build here. Right, so this one is disabled. If these steps attempted to download Octopus itself, it would get 7.4.1, I think is the latest. Yeah, 7.4.1. But we've purposefully installed a slightly older version on our system just to differentiate between the capability that we manually add and the one that this will get for us. So let's run this and see what happens. So what we expect here is that the agent is going to use the built-in, the version of Octopus installed on the server, which is going to be 7.4.0. And you can see in the logs, one of the things we did was actually print out the version to make it easy for people to see this.
Matt, while it's doing this, you were saying that Octo CLI step, that's the one that it will use it based on the plugins version of Octo, or is that the opposite?
So that tool installer, you mean, yeah. So that has a bundled copy of Octopus, of the CLI.
Which comes with the plugin, right?
That's right, yeah. So that,
okay.
That is up to date as of now, but that may not always be the case.
And just to reiterate, if you don't include that step, the Octopus steps will go out and download the latest?
Yeah, it will attempt to, yes. And in almost all cases, it will be able to succeed, but there are those cases where it can't.
So, okay, so I guess you would only include that if you were having issues with the download, or you just wanted to ensure it happened because you're potentially using an older version, including that?
No, so every step will attempt to download the CLI regardless. So
okay.
Yeah, you don't actually,
okay.
That's the default behavior. The install tool step will both first try and get it from a download, but it has that fallback capability that the other steps don't have.
I got you. So it's just like a fail safe.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
So what we can see here is, because I set that capability, we're using the built-in copy of Octo, or not built-in, we're using the installed copy of Octo, which is 7.4. So that's what we expected to happen. And so if I go back to my pools and I get rid of that capability, where are we? Capability, what's going on me? I expected to see that there. I'm not sure where it's gone. Anyway, we'll see what happens. Okay, so let's go back to builds. Edit. So yeah, what we'll do is actually re-enable this. I may have done something a bit screwy there with that capability, but we'll see what happens if we enable this one.
So the expected behavior is we will use 7.4.1?
Yes, that's what I'm expecting here.
Okay.
Hopefully this won't take too long. Yeah, so that's what we expect here, and we expect that both because it will attempt to download the CLI, which will succeed in this case, but if it didn't succeed, it could fall back to the included version. So if I went ahead and say disable networking in this VM, for example, you'd have that fallback, and that's kind of as close as we would get in a demo to demonstrating that that something like a proxy was standing in the way, for example. So there we go. So we're using the embedded tool, and 7.4.1 is what we've used there. Yeah, so this is the bit that, so this will only be updated as the plugin gets updated. So there might be some drift between the version installed with the plugin and the version that's the latest version available from Octopus. Actually, I think we should look at that step. I think I may have. Right, so I actually added a setting here that forced it to the embedded version. And so that's why it had that message that said using the embedded version. What I'll do here is set it to latest, and we should see that it actually downloads, or in our case, probably because I've done it before, it recognizes that the version it downloaded previously was the latest, and we'll just use that. But we should see that in the logs as well. While that's going, might just jump back and queue another build without this step so we can see what that looks like. Okay, push, so what do we get here? Right, so this is the download that I did previously, but it's gone out and said 7.4.1 is the latest version, but I've already got it, so I'm not going to download it again. But this point here is where a network request is made, not through a proxy, and so this point, this first bit of these steps, are where you may run into trouble. So if we go back here, so this is the build where I disabled that tool installer. And we'll see the same kind of log messages. Okay, interesting. That one actually, yeah, I may have done something a bit squirrely there with that with that capability. It's defaulted back to that. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what I did there, but you can see here that in the absence of that tool installer, we've kind of fallen back either to the capability defined on the agent, or this would have actually also tried to download it itself if it couldn't find it. Just going to double check that that agent. Yeah, I don't actually know where that went through. Anyway, yeah, either that's a bug or I've done something a bit silly, but for whatever reason, it does still have that setting is saved there, even though it's not listed anywhere. But hopefully that is kind of gives you some insight into what people actually do with Azure as far as our plugins go, and some of the tools you can use to debug the getting the Octopus CLI accessible, and viewing those network requests to kind of get an insight into what's going on behind the scenes. That was all I really wanted to show, though. I mean, we do have a little bit of time. Were there any questions or anything you wanted to maybe look at in a bit more detail?
Yeah, I recalled coming into a situation with a customer at some point where they were using an older version of the plugin, but that was all they said, and I was trying to reference which version of the CLI was bundled with that old version. Is there an easy way to reference, like find that specific piece of information?
No, the only thing I can think of the top of my head, depending on how old they're okay, maybe, yeah, we could probably start way, way back. So we're up to version 3 of the plugin.
Mm-hmm.
Version 2, which is quite old now, I'd be surprised. Oh, actually, people probably are still running it. Maybe they've just never updated. Yeah, so the old version was written in PowerShell. It only really worked on Windows for that reason. I don't recall if that bundled the CLI. It may have. So if they're talking about this old PowerShell version,
Mm-hmm.
I think the way you can tell is, right, so it would be version 2. We released 3 and then we've gone up to 4 as well. Yeah, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head for version 2 too long ago. Version 3 or 4, though, I think would just be to create a build here with this step. So you could probably, if I just go new build pipeline, I don't know if we can create a blank one. Anyway, I'll just use this. Sorry, that's a template. I don't want that. I just want an empty job. Create, add a step. So this is the installer here. And if you change that or leave that as embedded, if we tasks, what needs my attention? Agent pool. There we go. So I just create that empty. I think you can get it from the logs then. It's just going to tell you.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember they didn't include any logs. I couldn't really find an easy way to figure that out. I think I just kind of wish we had that release comparison tool for Octopus server, basically for everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's easy enough. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, how could you? I think there is a manual. No, if they're using an old version. No, I think this is probably the easiest way, short of actually trying to download and unpack the specific version of the plugin.
Yeah, no
you
worries.
I could show you how to do it, but it'd take us 45 minutes and you'd figure it out anyway. So yeah, I'd probably just stick with this.
maybe if the time comes where that's needed.
Yeah, that's right.
Cool, thank you.
All right. Is there anything
I had,
else?
yeah, I had a question. Is there, I know with like Jenkins, I'm not sure on SeamCity, there's like verbose and stuff like that. Is there anything like that in Azure DevOps, or is that all by default? It's already verbose?
No, it won't be. There should be like an additional options field. Click this. Additional options. So if there's not a verbose option anywhere, you can probably just, I'm not sure what the command is off the top of my head, but it will be, you just add it here.
Dash verbose or whatever.
Yeah, I'm sure that's probably all it is. Let's actually, let me just double check.
It's log level equals verbose.
Right. That one there.
Cool.
Yep. Should
And
work.
there's nothing else in here that should be like an easy win or something like that, like with, you know, stuff we should check first other than the build logs or the Octopus server logs. Anything you off the top of your head?
This is
If
probably
not, that's
something I
okay.
didn't go into.
Hmm.
The connections, Azure models like connections to external things as service connections. So these are going to be a whole bunch of different things, Git and other bug trackers or whatever. But this is the connection here for Octopus. You won't be able to see the key, but you can verify that the URL is there. And if they're having SSL issues, there's this button here you can use to turn it off. That's a good debugging trick. Easy wins, though.
If you can't think of any, that's okay. But
Yeah. The only thing I can think of that does come up occasionally is that these drop downs here show IDs instead of names. And that will be because, actually, we can probably, if we can simulate that. There'll either be like a network connection issue because the request, these drop down lists, what they're doing is behind the scenes, I think they save everything as the ID, but presented to the user, they're displaying the name, and it needs to make that connection to Octopus to get the mapping of ID to name. So I'm just wondering if we don't have Octopus there, we may see that in action.
so it actually saves that JSON locally. Oh wow.
Yeah, so this, you'll see, this is kind of common in support tickets, right? I've lost my names. And so we can, this is one way we can simulate that. There's just no Octopus server anymore to be mapping the ID that was saved in the project to the nice name. It may also be, I suspect, if the, say for example, this project got deleted, that ID would no longer exist in Octopus and there'd be nothing to map it to. So it would probably show show the ID here as well.
That's good to know. Thanks.
Yeah. The other trick that I find handy is this view YAML button. It's this is just a nice way of people, like in a support ticket, giving you the configuration that they've set in their step. Actually, you can see here that that's what's being saved, and because Octopus doesn't exist or is not on, there's nothing to reference it to. So you can, that's another way of maybe trying to correlate what people see on the screen to to what's actually been saved. So I've just gone through here and refreshed those, and they've come back. But if we view YAML, like this is what's actually being saved. So
That's interesting.
that's a handy Yeah, because this is the important bit, right?
Mhm.
This name is quite secondary. Just be aware, this seems relatively recent. Like I'm thinking in the last year that this View YAML feature came up. So don't be surprised if people say, I don't have that option.
I do have one question. I don't know if you weighed in on it. I had an Azure DevOps ticket, I think, last week, where they had an issue with version 2 point something, and I could not get it to work. Is there a way to do that if I need to reproduce something, or no?
Ooh, yeah. Wow, we stopped shipping that a long time ago. I'm not even sure where you
Yeah,
get
I
it
got him
from.
to go up to 3, and he said it was working for him, so that it was fine in that instance. I'm just thinking about it in the future.
Yeah, I don't actually know where we store if we even do versions that old.
Okay.
We may, if we really had to do it, we might be able to go back and do our Team City builds or something and dig it out. But yeah, I certainly can't point you anywhere convenient that gives you old versions of, especially going back to version 2.
Well, I'll cross my fingers and hope I don't need to then.
Yeah, hopefully everyone's updated by now. One of the good things actually is people see. I'm pretty sure Azure automatically updates. I'm sure the cloud one does anyway.
Well, it did, and that was the interesting part, is that it updated him automatically, and then some sort of issue arose where with task version 2 lost, it actually was not showing him the project names anymore. It was showing him the project IDs.
Right.
So then I had him switch it to task version 3. He chose his project group, and the name showed up. So he was happy again.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I don't know what functionality was lost there when our plugin updated versus task version 2, but
Yeah, I expect. Well, version 2 certainly wasn't space aware, but yeah, it's entirely possible we actually changed one of the APIs, and version 2 doesn't work anymore.
I'll tell you what, if I ever have to repro, yeah. I'll reach out to you.
I would say version 2 is not supported anyway. Like it's an old code
Okay.
base. Yeah, so version 2 is written in PowerShell. Version 3 and 4 are written in TypeScript. And
I guess my follow-up question is then, task version 3, that should be compatible with all versions of Octopus. Is there any reason someone would need to stay on task version 2?
No. No.
Okay.
People should be getting off 2. Version 3, I mean, it's still old. I can't remember exactly what changed.
I think 4, you have to have a space.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 wasn't space aware. Okay, right. Maybe 4 gave us the nice drop down.
Yeah, we were finding you can just leave the space blank in task version 3, and it worked for non-space versions of Octopus.
Right. Yeah, that may be true, actually. It might have been spaces that caused that version bump.
So it took us a long way to get there, but if I get someone saying task version 2 isn't doing this, I would just tell them, please use task version 3.
Yeah. If
Okay.
no one's going back and patching 2, like that's well out of support now. So
okay.
If it is broken and we couldn't fix it, yeah, they've got no option at that point. Upgrade.
All right, sounds good to me. That's all I got. Kenny, you got anything?
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for joining. I'll put up the recording when it's available, and I hope it was useful.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, thank you very much.
All right,
See you later.
See ya.